common gospel. The gospel that most of us know, that most of us have heard, have been taught, and believe. And there's a lot of truth in it. So let me show you what that looks like. And so, in the beginning was God, and there was Adam and Eve. And so I'm going to have them bring out the loincloths. Just kidding. Jenny's actually looking like, oh my God. No, we'll do that. It's not a sermon. So Adam and Eve. We know what happened is that God wanted to be in a relationship, you guys face him, with Adam and Eve. With Adam and Eve. But what happened was, we all know it was the woman's fault, but both of them ultimately turned from God and rebelled. Would you turn your backs to him? And because God can't have any part with sin, he can't look upon sin, then he also turned his back on them. And because they deserve to die, because they rebelled against God, and because God can't have any part with sin, then God sent Jesus. Come over here. To stand in their place. So Jesus stood in their place. Because Jesus had to pay the sin for Adam and Eve's rebellion, because we know the scriptures tell us that because of one man's sin, all have sinned, right? And because of that, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And so Jesus had to stand in their place of sin so that God would be able to stomach them and to become in right standing, so they could become in right standing with God to avoid his white, hot wrath. That sounds familiar. And that if Jesus doesn't stand in your place, then God will consume you and pour out his white hot wrath on you too. And that is the gospel that most of us know. And there's a lot of truth, and it's almost all truth. What I want to do this morning with you is maybe let's take a look at this through a slightly different lens. Through a slightly different lens. You guys get back in your places here. Here we go. And so in the beginning was God. And then he created Adam. And through Adam he created Eve. And they were in fellowship with one another. And then what happened is that Eve and Adam sinned. And they turned their back on God. And God in Jesus comes around to reconcile. Now, he takes on humanity. God takes on humanity through his son Jesus.
Yes.
And I want you to start noticing very subtle differences. What we know is that God doesn't change. In fact, he's the same. What? Yesterday and forever. Yesterday, today, and forever. And so, if we ever want to get to the place that we believe that God is like Jesus, then we have to say, because God doesn't change, and he's always been like who? Jesus. Let me say that again. If we believe that God doesn't change, you all just said that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Am I a man that I would change or lie? No. But if we believe that God never changes, if he's like Jesus now, then he was always like Jesus. Is that right? Okay. Let me give you Mary Atkins. She had what? How many? 5 husbands? She had 5 husbands. And I guess, I don't know if she was getting up to number 6 or she just said after 5, I'll just call it quitsies. But she was living with a man at the time. And God came. And he sat down with her at a well. And he began to tell her all about herself. And he came to her in her state of sin and rebellion. And he condemned her? No. What he said was, I will give you something to drink that'll make you never thirst again. God came to the woman at the well. And here is a man. He's a tax collector. A tax collector. His name is Zacchaeus. And he had drank the Roman Kool-Aid, and he had decided to be seen as a Benedict Arnold of sorts. He had committed treason in the eyes of the Jews, and he was taking their money and giving it to the Romans who oppressed them. And he's also making quite a profit for himself and would thieve. He was an extortionist. And he was rebelled against God. And then God comes and meets him one day. And what's he saying? Zacchaeus, come down from that tree. I want to go to your house today. I want to eat with you. And I want to be your friend. God came to him while he was in the sinner's position. God came to him through Jesus. And there was another woman. Standing in a place of rebellion. Standing in a place of rebellion. Whose choice is it to stand there? Her choice. You see how in the garden we pitted God against man and humanity? And they stood back to back. I want you to notice as we go through one more example here in a second. I want you to notice how God's posture never changes. God's posture never changes. So we talked about a woman who had 5 husbands at the well. We talked about a woman caught in adultery. Let's hone in on that for a second. I'm going to have to calm down for a second because my mind is really spinning. Because I just really, in my heart of hearts, know that someone had an appointment in their appointment book that you did not know. But you're here to meet with God today. You didn't know it. Might have felt like it, but it might have seemed just like a random, normal Sunday morning where somebody tricked you or promised a piece of pie afterwards, or some kind of, you lost a bet, you played paper, rock, scissors, and you threw the rock, but you should have threw the paper. Whatever it was, you ended up here this morning. You ended up here this morning. And it was on purpose. I just want to say that. So, in my head spin, if I put these 2 women as the same, forgive me, we'll edit that later. I know a few Bible stories. And so this woman was caught in adultery, and she was brought before Jesus. They brought her before Jesus, and they said, Jesus, what do we do with this woman? The law says that what? She must be stoned. She must be executed because she was caught in adultery. And Jesus says, you're right. You're right. The law does say that she deserves to die. And here's the thing about that. You have to understand that those men who brought her, they were following the rules. They were following Jesus said, that's fine. And the first of you without sin, you be the one to throw the first stone. We all know what happened. They dropped their rocks and they slowly walked away. And then Jesus says, where are your accusers? And she says, they're gone. And he says, you know what? I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more. Because while she was in a state of rebellion, she met God. She did not meet God's wrath. She met God's compassion. And she met God's love. There's a man. Don't know how this happened, but he's possessed by hundreds and hundreds of demons, living in the state of rebellion against God. And in fact, he was so crazy and so evil that they literally put him to live in a graveyard. They tried to chain him up because he was dangerous to himself and to others. He would cut himself. He would attack others. They tried to chain him, but God was so strong that he would break the chains. And he's living all alone, estranged from his family, estranged from his friends, estranged from the church community, from the temple, from the rituals that made him right with God. He was estranged and cast out. He was evil. He was more monster than he was man. He was more monster than he was man. And he would scream in his state of sin and evil. And no one would go near him. And he became that guy. The cautionary tale. That guy. We don't go near that guy. We don't talk to that guy. But one day Jesus gets on a boat. And he comes to meet that man. And what does God say? Sinner, evil, be gone. He says, what's your name? Because God wanted to know the man who no one wanted to know. God wanted to reach out to the man who lived in loneliness, tortured by his own demons, literally. And maybe some of you have lived that life, or maybe you're living that life now where you're tortured by memories and things that haunt you, and you feel so far from God. But just like this man and this story, this historical account, God came to meet the man where he was, in his graveyard, in his tattered clothes, cut marks all over his body, in his howling, in his frothing. What is your name? We know what he said. He said, my name is Legion, which refers to hundreds and hundreds of demons. And Jesus cast out those demons. You know the story? They went to a bunch of pigs and they ran out the side of the cliff. But the best part of the story is that Jesus sits down with the man. And he has fellowship with the man because he wanted to be that man's friend. We find that man clothed and in his right mind. Clothed and in his right mind. And what happened ultimately is that humanity took God and they nailed him to a tree. And they turned their back on God. We reject you. You are not our King. You are not our Savior. And what does God say? Forgive them. They don't know what